to this computer. So good morning. I am excited. I am very grateful to be joined here with Roger Roman, the founder and chief operating officer at LegalEase. Roger is the founder of Justice Tech and Justice Tech leader who has dedicated his career to using AI to break down legal barriers. And I thought the most important, first of all, I wanted to jump right in to the idea that ultimately you want to process 1 million expungements by 2030. And let me just jump into a little story that got me started on this topic. The lady's name is uh her name was now it escapes me, Sandra Mead. And she was arrested for bouncing a check. And ultimately it changed her whole life. And like she said, figures show that between 70 to 100 million people in America, 3 in 1 Americans have been under arrest for a minor conviction. It doesn't take much of a legal infraction to ruin your whole life.
Yep.
To eliminate your ability to get a job, to eliminate your ability to volunteer at your child's school, it just so this bounced check, they knocked on her door, the police knocked on her door. Ultimately she had bounced a check for groceries. She didn't even realize she had done it. They took her to jail. She was released pretty quickly, but it changed her whole life. So these expungements are important because of the fact that it changes everything. You're suddenly a convicted felon, possibly.
Yeah,
Or so
absolutely. And I think that story is about Dr. Sheena Mead.
Sheena Mead,
Yeah,
Dr. Sheena Mead, and she did a TED talk on it, and it was an
yeah.
incredible TED talk.
She's a leader in this area. She's been behind the Clean Slate Initiative, which is lobbied across the country to get laws changed and enforce automatic expungements in a lot of different states. She's definitely like at the top of the gamut when it comes to this justice reform work. She's definitely an inspiration for us. Yeah, and her story is incredible, right? Here she is, this accomplished woman who is being arrested and put in handcuffs for over a simple mistake. And that's what we find, out of the many Americans in the country, some estimates, there are estimates that range from 70 to 100 million people who have a record of some sort. And what a lot of people don't realize is that, it's not just about being arrested and being convicted of a crime and going to prison. Once you are booked into the system, that record, it becomes a record on your, it becomes a part of your record, right? It's an artifact on your record, whether it's thrown out, dismissed, or it's you get past it. No matter what, those things can come up on a background report, and a lot of people don't understand that they have the right. This is your right, to have these things expunged and removed.
And you're working actively to see that, right? And there's auto
Absolutely.
expunges in how many states now?
13. I think Illinois is the most recent state to pass a clean slate initiative. And initially when we set out building this company and we talked to potential investors, they were concerned, well, with clean slate catching so much momentum and being passed in several states, how is this going to affect your business model? And we don't look at clean slate as something that's harming our business model. It's actually bringing more awareness to the problem. And the good part for us, in our business model is that once clean slate initiative passed, those crimes that are automatically expunged from your record, it's not a blanket, right? It's not 100%. There are certain things that qualify for clean slate, and there are certain things that don't qualify for clean slate, and that varies by state. So, um, you know, clean slate initiative, and actually California has probably been the leader in terms of reform in the laws. And there's still petition-based expungements that our platform can be valuable in helping consumers use, even in California that has a pretty extensive clean slate policy.
But okay, so let's just get hypothetical. Just say all 50 states passed this California sort of foundation of a law. They use California as a role model.
Hmm.
First of all, wouldn't okay, so and we're not talking about where there's blood on your hands. We're talking about honest mistakes that are
Yep.
just and like and I'm not quoting Sheena over and above you, but just when I went to her website first, she said there's 44,000 collateral consequences or barriers to employment, education, housing, and more. Everything basically. You cannot get an apartment in some states, and you're at 13 states where these expungements are happening, and you're still saying prefacing it's not the simplest thing. There's this auto expungement law in 13 states. It's not necessarily auto expunged. You've still got to,
Right.
and then you get which is legalese to say, how do I get this expungement that was supposed to be automatic, but for my particular instance, it's not.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's pretty much how it works. And in addition to, so I think, and don't quote me on these numbers. Um, I want to say there were somewhere around 8 million people who were affected by the Clean Slate Initiative in California. They also had a sunset law that was passed as well. Of those, there are still over 1 million remaining people who are eligible for a petition-based expungement. So typically what happens with the automatic expungements is, there's a system that's built. It sweeps the records, and if these records qualify on a certain level, whether time passed, people have paid their fines and things like that, then they're slated for automatic expungement. Like I said, California has the most extensive. They have the most cover. In certain states, it's only for marijuana offenses, right? In certain states, it's only for certain misdemeanor offenses, right? Maybe it's your first misdemeanor, and you still have the opportunity to expunge a second one, which would be petition based, which is what we do. So there nothing is all encompassing. There hasn't been a law that passed that says, okay, we're going to wipe out all of these old records out of the books. In addition to that, there's the implementation period. So Illinois most recently passed a clean slate initiative, actually about 2 weeks ago now, and those laws won't go into effect until 2029. So until 2029, there's a ton of people who still need help with their petition-based expungements. And I'm my belief is that even after those automatic expungements come, there are going to be people who need to know whether they've been affected by those automatic expungements, which we can do with our AI agent Wilma. She can let people know like, hey, your case qualifies under this law, and it should be automatically expunged. We can run a background check to make sure that it's been removed. So the opportunity for us to help people is still there. The laws aren't meant for layman people to understand most times, and that's where we come in. We want to make these processes and these situations very easy for people to handle on their own without an attorney. I mean, I think the one thing that we always compare it to is taxes, right? There was a time, before my time, where taxes and filing your taxes was looked at like this daunting task, and you had to go hire a CPA, or you had to go to a commercial tax prep agency, right? And now there's a ton of people who can just log on to TurboTax, sign up, follow the prompts, and complete the stuff themselves. And we view ourselves the same way, right? Instead of spending weeks calling attorneys and trying to set up appointments, and paying consultation fees and trying to figure out if you're eligible, that just finding an attorney alone can be a month process, right? Finding the right attorney, you're probably going to come out of a few dollars, because some people are going to charge you money just to talk to you, and then they're going to charge you a hefty bill, right? That can range from 1,500 to up to $5,000, we've seen in some cases. So having a platform with a straightforward $150 fee and a $500 fee for more of a high touch solution, we think can empower a lot of people, and of course push us to our goal to help 1 million people get an expungement by 2030.
Well, I think so too, and I don't think there's going to be ever an end to the need for your services because just like you said, in California alone, who really has, and I think, unless I misunderstood, they have the best law out there at the moment, right? But they still have a million expungements that possibly need petition. And
Absolutely.
just like you said, petition, that word is a giant word because legal jargon is even a bigger word. So
Absolutely.
you go into this whole idea that I am entitled to this petition, and then you look at the petition and you're like, what in the world am I looking at? And
Right.
I do
Right.
that all the time. I'm just so basically just me thinking I'm trying to understand this a recent Supreme Court ruling, and I have checked all around and I have still not gotten clarity on it. So as far as it's the same thing basically. It could be a Supreme Court ruling or it could be a petition for expungement. It's extremely technical. So when we have
Yeah.
you there,
Absolutely.
right, and you're saying $500. But now let's go on to H&R Block. So we've seen a presidential candidate talk about how he is going to make taxes so simple you could file it on a postcard. It was just a fascinating, it was I would say a false promise, but it was absolutely fascinating to people. But when you think about the idea of these expungements, how this could literally change people's lives. Why aren't politicians in every state expressing? Because the president can't do this. This is a statewide thing, and we have the whole no kings thing going. So let's not
Right.
go there. But this is a statewide thing. But I feel like, and granted, this is just me thinking out loud, but this is one of those petri dishes that really produces an underclass, that really produces a
Yeah.
compromised civilian, and a lot of them. You are completely compromised. You can't. I knew a girl that couldn't get an apartment because of one simple infraction. I didn't even understand. I was extremely young when it all came about. I co-signed a lease for a year. We lost contact. Everything went fine. I'm not complaining, but it's a sad situation to be in. That
Yes.
you have this. You can't. Where do I live? I'm an
Yeah.
adult. Where do I go?
It affects a lot of people, and even people who don't have acute pain where it's not an application for an apartment, it's not a job promotion. It's a mental barrier, right? I often tell the story of one of our first customer. It was a young lady who was a nurse's assistant, right? She was a CNA, and she had been a nurse's assistant for a while. She had dreams at one point of becoming an RN, but she never pursued them because she had a domestic violence charge, a misdemeanor on her record, from a fight years ago with her boyfriend at the time in public. And, there might have been some alcohol involved, and they were both arrested. And I guess the charges were later dismissed or thrown out. And she had this thing on her record, and she just thought it looked so bad to have a domestic violence, stamp on her, and she never pursued those opportunities. And she finally came to us for an expungement because she learned about it, and she pursued it, but it was more of a mental block. She hadn't been turned away from anything. She hadn't been told, "Hey, we got this thing on your record, so you don't qualify." It was an intent. It was more of a fear of coming out and being rejected because of this thing, or someone digging into it and finding out more about it, that held her back. So it's definitely something that holds people back. The data shows that after you have an expungement, there's a 22% bump in your wages, potentially across the board, right? So there's an opportunity for people to make more money. Like you said, there's an opportunity to get into better housing, which improves the lives of not only yourself but maybe your family, your children, the schools they go to. There's a ripple effect across the board. And to kind of go back to your previous point of why you don't see more legislative action around this, right? And why there's only 13 states out of the 50 with the Clean Slate Initiative. I mean, there's different motives. I'll tell the story. My co-founder Lawrence. Let me give you some background. My co-founder Lawrence is an attorney. He's had an expungement before, for something that happened when he was in college. We actually went to Howard together, here in DC, and he got arrested, and he had to get an expungement before he went to law school. He was worried about it holding him back. But in addition to being an attorney, he's also a state legislator in the state of Mississippi. And when we were first starting this company, it was his first session, right? He was a rookie or junior legislator in Mississippi, and he introduced a bill for automatic expungements in Mississippi. It was killed before it could even made it out of committee, right? Like, it was killed. It didn't make it at all. And he came to me. He said, "Look, dude, I'm going to introduce this bill. It's probably going to kill this little company thing that we're working on, but if it passes, it's going to help a lot of people." And I was like, "All right, cool, whatever. Do your thing." And when he talked to, I don't know the correct term for, um, I guess, the chairman or the leader or whoever the person was who had power to kill this bill, right, and lobby for it. When he talked to him after, he said, "Hey, I'm an attorney. This is the leader of the house, right?" He said, "I'm an attorney. I make way too much money from expungements to allow this bill to come through." Right. And that's what he told my co-founder. Right. So even though, there are a lot of progressive states, and that's mostly where we see the clean slate stuff working at it in the more progressive states. There are a lot of states who have actively worked to make this a more seamless and frictionless process. There are a ton of states who haven't, right, and who have made the process extremely difficult and added a lot of barriers for people to jump through. And that's where we come in to kind of be that translator. Lawyers get paid to translate the law for their clients, and we feel like you don't have to pay thousands of dollars for that, right? Like, we have technology now where you can step in and use something and get a clear, concise, and accurate explanation for whatever questions you have or information you're seeking.
And that's My biggest concern now is, and like you said, there's going to be these roadblocks, but we got 13 states. I don't give all the credit to Sheena Mead. I give the credit to you too, that you're making this happen. We've got 13 states. We've got one state that really is the one doing the most, California. The other 12 that have initiated these laws are going to say we've done enough, and you really haven't done enough. You really should move forward in a bigger way on this. But you're going to say this has already hit our desk and we're done with it. Okay, you still have got 37 states to work on. And we've still got to come to the realization of how destructive this is. Because,
Yeah.
you hear, I guess you'd say conservative politicians saying, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, get off Medicaid, get off Medicare, get a job. But I can't.
Right.
I have this mistake. And it's so frustrating because not to go into the hypocrisies that go on every day, but these politicians that think they're holier than thou have made bigger mistakes and have
Absolutely.
slipped past the goalie on them or got them expunged by a legal process that, like you said, is very expensive. I'm not saying give special treatment. I'm just saying let's somehow go across the board with some sort of equal treatment on a
Right.
lot of things. And these expungements are extremely significant to a, like you said, your wage goes up 22% on an average. Once you open the door, you've graduated nursing school, but you don't even want to apply because either you stand the risk of lying on your application and then ultimately getting fired for that, or not lying on your application and not getting the job to begin with.
Absolutely.
So so this is an enormous movement, and there is no end in sight to how your business will never be obsolete
And
because
that's I'm glad you understand that, right? And that's the one thing that, we're in the process of wrapping up our pre-seed fundraising, and we try to stress that to potential investors, like this is not a typical market where you say, hey, there's, 1 million people who need this service, and then, once we serve them, it's done. Every single day there's a new crop of people who become eligible for expungement. Every single day. We've coined the term unlimited market, right? Because again, though that time, once you're arrested and you pay your fines and you do your thing, that clock starts ticking. And every day in every state, there's a group of people who become eligible. Essentially, and just on the opposite side of that, right? Every day there's a person who's being arrested, right? Every single day, there's someone who has a run in with the Justice Department or with the police departments where they are. So it's an unlimited market, and we don't, of course, we don't want people to be arrested, but we do want to provide those solutions when they are, and they want to get an expungement, they want to seek record clearance. We want to be there and be there for them. So yeah, like you said, it's an unlimited market, and it's a lot of people who need the service. Um, we launched in July, the last week of July this year, and we launched in Mississippi exclusively. Right, we were going to do a phased rollout, right, state by state, take our time, be very methodical, and the demand we saw from across the country was overwhelming. We had over 3,000 people sign up in those first 2 weeks. From all over the country, not just Mississippi. We did have a few hundred people from Mississippi join, but just insatiable demand across the country, from California to Iowa to New York and Florida and Texas. And even someone from Canada reached out to us and said, hey, is this going to come to Canada? Because I need it, right? And we were like, oh, we got to brush up on the Canadian laws at this point, right? Is there a market in Canada, right? So, it's something that's sorely necessary. Again, because most people don't have access to attorneys, right? And even if you do, you don't always want to pay that sum of money that they might be charging. And on the flip side, expungements in the legal space is considered low hanging fruit, right? Like it's not one of the it's you never hear anyone say I'm going to be an expungement lawyer, right? It's not an area where a lot of lawyers focus on. It's typically something that they can do on the side in addition to their major practice, right? So it's not like we're coming in and removing this huge swath of business for attorneys or competing with attorneys. We're just giving a better option for the end user, which is the person who's looking to clear their record.
Well, I think there's an absolute need for a premier expungement attorney because, first of all, attorneys, and I'm not knocking attorneys, but they will let anything hit their desk as long as you write them a check. So it doesn't mean
Mhm.
they know what they're doing. And I'm just saying this, I don't want to get a lot of attorneys mad at me, but I have seen it where they take on cases that they're really not prepared for. So
I've seen it
expungements is
too.
very specific.
Yep.
So it's extremely. Now, when you say every day someone's getting arrested and in the need of an expungement, keep in mind every day someone's getting put in that position. So it's something I talk about often. Children timing out of foster care, 18 years old, thrown to the world with a small check from the state every month. They are in a they are in a position at any moment in time to do something desperate. This
Yep.
is not awful criminal behavior. I am an 18-year-old. I didn't know what I was doing. I have a child. I now don't even have a place to stay. My child is crying hungry. I am going to go write a bad check and get my child groceries. This is not criminal behavior.
Right.
This is
Right.
survival.
Right.
And that puts them in that position. That check will bounce. That person, Sheena Mead being an example, will be ultimately addressed. It will spiral.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing, we have to clarify, essentially talk, especially when we talk to, potential partners or investors for sure. That these aren't violent crimes. Most time in 99% of the states you can't get violent crimes expunged, right? You can't get, very elevated crimes or very elevated felonies, you can't get them expunged. There are felonies that qualify. Typically, they are around, you know, theft or things of that nature, but anything violent is typically not an expungable offense. Um, and crimes of moral turpitude, right? So embezzlement, things like that are typically left off. But most misdemeanors, I would say the majority of misdemeanors are eligible, and then some low level felonies for sure. So, like you said, it's people who have made a mistake, who've moved past. A lot of the people who come to us, they're 10 years removed, and they have this blemish on their record. I'll give you another story of a young man who came to us. I call him a young man, but he was about my age. Um, who he had a bit of a rough early adulthood, right, and he got into some trouble and did some things, and since then he's gone on to be an entrepreneur, and he's active in his community, and his community, they reached out for him to coach the little league football team in his local community. They came to him. His child was a participant on the team. They thought he would be a great role model for the youth. Everything was great. He was volunteering. Then when he went to officially become the coach of the team and fill out the paperwork, he didn't pass the background check because of this stuff that he had on his background 15 years ago, more than 10 years ago, less than 15 years ago. He had completely moved past from it. Honestly, he said he hadn't even thought about it. He was so far removed from it that he didn't think it would still be an issue. And here he is being rejected. And not only is it, an inconvenience, and, it kind of puts a roadblock in your life of something you want to do, it's embarrassing as well, right? There are a ton of people who didn't know this about this man, his past, right? Because he's been such an upstanding citizen these past years. And they only know that upstanding citizen. They don't know the guy who was in and out of jail or got in trouble or made some stupid mistakes when he was younger. And now he has to confront both of those things, and he has to confront his child and say, well, I can't coach the team this year because I don't pass the background check. Well, why don't you pass the background check? That's a difficult conversation, and I think we should allow people the grace and the redemption, right, to be able to move on from those mistakes, especially if they haven't made mistakes again since then.
So that's it. When you tell that story and you think about the 15-year timeline that passed, if the word was out that LegalEase is there for you, and you don't forget about it, you don't just let it go by. You just don't let it slip your mind. And you do pursue it. You pursued it, you got it done, and it's done, right? But this
It's done.
gentleman didn't think of it. And like you said, he has to have this awful conversation with his child. He would have been a great coach. He's precluded from being a now you got the parents in the background talking a bunch of nonsense that they don't even have a clue what happened or why
Right,
it
right.
happened, but they are going to create some narratives.
Yep.
And and so and that is just a classic example of why I believe there's such a growing chasm between rich and poor,
Yeah.
because you a rich child's parents will go to the extent of being sure this thing is clear. They will call the district attorney. They will get LegalEase's phone number from the district attorney. Whereas when you're on your own, you're a young 17-year-old, you don't even have a dad to call on to say, "Look, I just got in trouble." You're just gonna say, "Oh, I walked out of prison. I'm gonna carry on today. I'm good. I'm good. They let me out
Yeah,
on
and
my own
that's, I mean,
recognizance."
It's funny you mentioned that because that's exactly the story of my co-founder, right? So, like I said, we went to Howard University together a long time ago at this point. And he was out partying and got into some trouble, and he was arrested and it was thrown out, right? So the case was dismissed. He was arrested on a Friday. I think he went to court on Monday, and the judge threw it out. It was dismissed, and like you said, he walked away from that thinking, "Oh, I'm good. Nothing's gonna happen. I'm okay. I don't even have to tell my parents about it. No one has to know that I was drunk on U Street acting a fool, right? And I can move on. And then here we are, a year or so later, he's applying to law school, and the question comes, have you ever been arrested? And now he's stuck because he doesn't know what to put there. Like you said, he can lie, and that'll come back and haunt him. Or he can disclose that he's been arrested, but his parents don't even know that, right? And now, if he doesn't get into law school because of that, how does he have that conversation with them when they don't even know that he was arrested in the first place, right? So he had to go back before he could even submit his application and talk to his lawyer, his dad. And the lucky thing for him, and this is where he was fortunate, and this is where he saw the opportunity early on before we even talked about building the company. His dad is an attorney. So his dad said, "Hey, don't worry about it. I know you're stressed out. You should have told me, right? You should have told me when it first happened, but we can move past that part. You need to get an expungement." And he had no idea what an expungement was at the time, but because he had an attorney father, he was able to go ahead and get an expungement. And then again, beyond that, he was able to, actually pay for it, right? It wasn't a situation where he was by himself. He actually had a dad who supported it and went and paid an attorney. I think he paid $2,500, which a lot of people don't have to do,
Right.
at that time. And this is my own belief, but I believe his dad paid it because he wanted to make sure that he got into law school. In a different situation, he might have made him pay it himself. But so yeah, this is something like you said, it can really it's a small thing, and luckily enough, it's been written into law that we have the right to do it. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't know that, and we don't take advantage of it.
No, absolutely. And when you talk about $2,500, I just did a podcast, and one of the topics was that about 60% of Americans at the moment today don't have $2,000 for an emergency. Do
Absolutely,
not
yeah,
have $2,000. Do not have. There is no hopes of
right,
cutting back and ultimately gathering it within 60 days. No, it's not going to happen. They're not making it every day anyway. So
right,
you're so again, we are in this spiral, this downward race to the bottom spiral, and this is something that can really make a significant difference in their life, in everybody's life, in a lot of people's life, should I say. But there will be, LegalEase will be a giant organization someday. But it should
absolutely,
be even bigger, and it should be across 50 states that at least. Okay, so when you talk about automatic expungements, when you talk about you're free and clear after 90 days and you don't even have to pick up the phone, some states will never agree to that. But if there's a process where they really want to vet what happened, they want to understand the crime, they want to sit down with you and talk to you and say exactly why did this happen, and they need you, and that's how the state configures the law. That should still be a 50 state option.
yeah.
I mean, absolutely, that should be a 50 state option. Now, California goes a little further. I guess it's just automatic for most circumstances. Most most red
Well, and the
states.
the, the problem, not to cut you off, but the problem with, well, the issue that arises from the automatic expungements is that people still don't necessarily know. There's not a notice that's going out that's saying, "Hey, your record was automatically expunged yesterday," right? Like there's not, you don't know, right? The end user, the customer, the citizen, they don't know what has been expunged and what hasn't. And we've even talked to people who didn't even know, automatic expungement was a thing, right? So being able to help people navigate that space and find out, hey, you think you need a petition expungement, but you've already been covered by this clean slate initiative or these automatic expungements, that in itself is a tool or something that we've built that can help people out when they have a conversation with our AI agent Wilma. She can really talk you through that thing, and if you have specific details about your case, she can let you know if you've been affected by these automatic expungements or not. And then again, those automatic expungements, they're not blanketed across all cases. There are qualifiers for that. And our government sometimes makes mistakes, right? So sometimes there are cases that should be automatically expunged that haven't been automatically expunged because of some clerical error or some something that just has gone wrong within the system. So having a resource for customers, having a resource for users to be able to figure this stuff out without paying an arm and a leg to an attorney, that's really the ethos and the goal of our company. We say that we are building tools to help people solve non-complex legal matters without an attorney. And we're true to that, right? And we're starting here with expungements, but as you know, I'm sure you understand, there are a lot of areas in the law, right, and justice and legal tech that can be improved and made easier for the end user um, using technology, especially with the technologies that has emerged over the last couple of years, AI in particular, and machine learning. It allows us to remove some of these paper heavy, outdated, archaic processes and build more smoother workflows. So we're looking in that direction. Of course, we're focused 100% focused on expungements right now and record clearing. And our goal is to become nationwide over the next several months and help 1 million people. But we do understand that this same technology and these same workflows can be applied to other areas of the law to help people out.
And that's huge. And how far does AI go? Like so we're talking about, of course, there's 50 states, there's 50 different standards. When you call your AI, does it, first of all, can it even open your case? Can it look at your case? Can the AI can you?
So case files are vary by state. There are some states that have public databases, and there's a potential for us to tap into those databases and see what comes up. There are also states that have closed databases, right? So you can't see those files. So we rely on the information that the customer brings. When you talk to our bot, we have a conversational chat with you in plain language. We make it plain, and the information you give us, that's how we can conclude whether you're eligible for an expungement or not. And we are in the process of releasing a new feature where we can actually run a background check in real time for you, to make sure that the data that the information you're giving us matches with the data that the state has, right? And you have everything. And we learned that from some of our early customers who they weren't quite sure because this happened so long ago and they had to go dig up things and stuff like that. So we rely on the information from the user. In most cases, we don't tap into any databases or anything like that, because we are not an attorney. We're not doing this service for you. We're empowering you to do the service, right? We're empowering you to complete it. Just as TurboTax is not gonna go and find your W-2s and see how much you worked this year. They're gonna rely on you to input that information and then give you the results based on that. We're empowering the customer, and I think for us in terms of compliance, and making sure we stay on the right side of the law, that's the best route to go because, even though you might get some inaccurate information sometimes and, people might not have everything, there's a space for them to come back and correct things as we go forward. We've built a very frictionless process and you can save your information, you can save your conversation, you can always come back once you collect the data that you might not have in the initial conversation.
So this is really significant. So now let's unpack this for a second. First of all, you are ultimately looking for seed money, right? Looking for investors, right?
Yeah, so
Now,
we're raising a pre-seed round. Yep.
right. But time is money. Imagine if you thought about, just think about volunteers. Because, like you said, it may take a live person. Now, if you empowered a group of volunteers with the knowledge you have to help people, and just like you said, and you record the conversations, and this volunteer comes to you and goes, "Hey, listen to this conversation that I had. Did I get it right? Do I need to call this person back? How do I follow up with this?" Because not only would the volunteer base help you as an employer, but it would also help prevent people from getting into these situations because you would open up their minds to understanding how not to get into these situations.
Right, right. Absolutely. And I mean, what you just described has been a big part of our go-to-market. And it was actually a big part of our MVP testing. So for your audience, who might not be aware, MVP is your minimally viable product, right? So when you're building a startup, it's the most basic model of what you're trying to build. Doesn't have the bells and whistles, probably doesn't look as clean and sleek as you would like. But it attacks the problem. And when we built our MVP in 2023, my co-founder, he was doing a lot of pro bono work with organizations in Mississippi where they would do these expungement clinics. And we actually tested out a lot of our early platform with these expungement clinics where people would actually come in and we had there were volunteers there, and they would use our platform to onboard the people who were looking to to get their record cleared. And instead of a person sitting there and taking 20 minutes or so or 30 minutes to ask these qualifying questions, we were able to give people tablets and they were able to just kind of input the information. And by the time they got to the volunteer had everything in front of them and they could, accurately translate or relay the information back to the customer. So yeah, I think that's huge in terms of awareness. That's a big part of our go to market. When we go to each state, we make sure that we tap in with the people who are doing this work on the ground. Again, we don't look at these people as competitors. We look at this as if we're giving them a better tool to do their job, right? So, those volunteers and those people who are actually spreading awareness around expungements and record clearing, they're very valuable in terms of us and getting the word out. And we're looking to partner with as many of them as we possibly can. So if anyone is listening and you want to partner with LegalEase to come into your state, or you guys hold expungement clinics or anything, we're happy to partner with anyone. Just reach out for sure.
That is huge because it takes a coalition. It really does. It's
Yep.
it's not so simple to just do something like this on a national level without a lot of participation. The other thing I podcast with everybody. So when you talk MVP, I mean, this term is racing through my mind. I'm going to start using it. I hope it doesn't charge royalties because I just loved it. Because I talked to a person the other day who's very involved with the Catholic Church. He was at a bill signing with Donald Trump on a movement to protect. There was sort of an idea that Christians were being targeted. That's here nor there. But I was like he said, the point of this, where I'm arriving with this, is that the churches are the most underused real estate in the world. They
Mhm.
generally have an audience on Sunday mornings and sometimes on Wednesdays, and of course Christmas and that. But for the most part, I mean, imagine doing seminars at churches for young people to
Right.
understand. Listen, every mistake you make could create. What was it here? It was potentially 43,000 barriers. Can, a simple mistake could cost you 43,000 collateral consequences or barriers to employment, housing, and volunteering.
Yeah.
Um, and so understanding how significant this is, getting out there, and I've talked to so many people about getting in these churches. So there's so many smart people that can impart so much important knowledge, getting into these churches and creating a seminar on life skills, on budgeting and investing and job hunting and not getting in trouble. And then ultimately, if you do make a simple mistake, getting that expunged. So that's all a part of what you're doing, really, because it seems like just like you said, your friend's dad's had $2,500. Your friend's dad had a significant connection to the notion of his son becoming a lawyer. So that's not what every child has. That every child doesn't
Right.
have that opportunity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I think you're spot on. Traditionally, if you think about the civil rights movement or you think about great movements, the church and other religious institutions have always been cornerstones in that, right? And it is a place where people meet and gather and discuss these ideas, right? Even outside of their religious prescriptions or their religious services, right? So I think you're right, and we're open to that as well. We're open to partnering with anyone. Like I said before, it's a huge part of our go-to-market plan. We're not, we're a startup. We don't have the money that a LegalZoom has, right? I think LegalZoom made like $25 million last quarter, right, to help people incorporate their businesses and do these things. So we can't go on a huge marketing campaign where we're running commercials and doing these things right now. We are really relying upon the people who are actually on the ground, whether that's local reentry organizations or criminal justice reform organizations or churches or civic organizations, even economic development corporations, right? That existed across the country. Those are the people who are on the ground, and those are the people who are involved in touching the folks who are really affected by these issues. Um, Again, I think education is a big part of it. A lot of people don't even know what an expungement is, unfortunately. And even the people who do, there's a lot of gray area around it, and they don't realize how it can help them or how it can impact their lives.
Well, it's funny you mentioned LegalZoom because I think that was Robert Shapiro's, right? Was that
Yep,
hit?
yep. He was
Okay,
one of
so
the
he
one of the founders. Yep.
he didn't start out. knocking on doors. He
Right.
LegalZoom, he started out with a lot more money. He started out with a significant amount of money and a significant amount of connections. And I think he presents it as it like a like a philanthropic opportunity, but it's really not. So
No, it's a major business. It's a
it's a
public.
major
I
business.
think it's a
So
public company at this point.
it may
If I'm
be. It may very well
yeah,
be. And it all had to do with his name, not really his investment.
right.
And it was a pedigree lawyer who said, "I'm going to do this," and everybody said, "Wow, that's a great idea. Let's get." There was a lot of hedge funds ready to jump right on. But you're going to have those investments. Things have changed, and it's something I tell people. Even though things have changed in both directions, big business has consumed everything little business does, but there's still more opportunity for little business because now a little business can campaign to the world
Yeah,
with everything going on. So there's both doors have opened wide. But this is very specific to something that's very needed, and it's gonna grow, and that's something I try to coordinate on my podcast is try to coordinate all the good efforts out there and try to understand how we can make things better for everyone. Warren Buffett likes to say the reason everybody was doing just fine 300 years ago is because everybody had the same skills. So we were all
yeah,
farmers and we all made the same income and we all needed what one another had. Then life became complicated. Well, it did become complicated, and those who were very good at navigating the complicated got very, very rich. And those who
yep,
weren't so good worked their butts off for peanuts. And so this is the type of your organization and so many others are the type of organizations we need to grow. We need to all be a part of. We need to all support and understand what you're doing is not just a business, but it's also an opportunity for a lot of people to make for better lives.
absolutely. Yeah, it is. It's a huge opportunity for people to improve their lives and be socially mobile, right? And upwardly mobile socially. And that's really a big part of our ethos. We are a for-profit company. We do think this is a scalable business that has, on the low end, a $7 billion market potential, on the high end, a $15 billion market potential. But there's also the social impact, right? And we're well aware that, you know, the more people who use our platform, the better, the more lives we can help and improve across the board. So, there's the marriage between impact and business, and we think, we're right there in the middle of it, building something that's sustainable, that's scalable, but also ultimately impactful.
Absolutely. I'm all for, I'm a capitalist. People think I'm just a diehard liberal. I'm a capitalist. I believe in capitalism. There is that marriage between profit and the good. And it's actually profit's good too, but the good that you're creating. Because the more I think about it, the more kids I think about that have the simplest things on it. I basically have always worked in the restaurant business. I see really smart kids in the kitchen
Hmm.
for minimal wages, and I know how when I sit down with them and talk to them, I know how smart they are. I can't believe the things they come up with. And obviously you should do the podcast. Generally they say no chance of that, but but the simplest thing can ruin your whole life. This can fix it, and this needs to grow bigger and bigger. And like you said, the 7 billion to $15 billion, I think it could be bigger than that because it's impacting a lot of people's lives. So I'm really encouraged about that. I'm really looking forward to um to just understand more and understand how you're growing. I mean, we're going to stay in touch basically is what I'm saying. I want to stay in
Absolutely.
touch.
Yes, please, please, please. And, follow us on social media. I mean, the best place to go is our website, legalese.com.
Okay?
You can go there, you can get all the information you need, whether it's, our social media handles. Unfortunately, we have different handles across platforms. So I can't say just go follow, legalese on Facebook or whatever. But if you go to our website, legalese.com, you can get all the information up that you need. You can also sign up for our newsletter. We let people know when we're coming to their state. We're in the process now of gearing up to be active in 5 additional states. So we started in Mississippi. We're in the process of going to California, Texas, Georgia, Illinois, and Maryland over the next few weeks. So, it's an exciting time. We're excited about what we're building. We are very encouraged by the demand and the and the testimonies. Right, it's a little tricky with sharing some of the stories, right? Because these are people's personal lives, and this is a highly sensitive matter. And if you're getting something expunged, you don't necessarily want to broadcast it to the world, right? But we've had a ton of inspirational stories, and with the user's permission, we've been able to share a few of them without revealing any intimate details. But it's really encouraging the amount of positive feedback that we get from customers, both who have used the platform and those who want to use the platform. So it's a good time, and we welcome all support. We welcome, we're open to exploring partnerships with anyone who has an idea or a way that we can work together. And again, those partnerships, they don't have to be huge expungement clinics with hundreds of people. It could be a more intimate, maybe you have a community or organization where you have, 10 to 15 or 20 people. We're happy to come in, teach you about the platform and the benefits and see if there's a possibility for us to work together.
Well, I'm really going to pursue this in the sense that if I do come across, or I'm going to try to create groups of people that in states you work in, and then have the conversation with you all together. We'll have the conversation,
Absolutely. Yes.
and then, because not only will that grow your business, and not only will that help lots of people, but it also grow the momentum of your business, which is,
Yep.
again, like I said, I'm extremely enthusiastic about. I love the idea of what you're doing, and I know you're going to get there. I know there's such a need for it. Like I said, before Roger Roman, I was researching Dr. Sheena Mead, and I was like, this story. When you say the intricate details, you can generalize the story so often without a single name, but just you can connect with a million people by saying bounce
Yeah.
check. I
Yeah.
mean, you can probably, I would say probably 100 million people you can connect with by saying what were the effects
Absolutely.
of a bounce
Absolutely.
check. So, I mean, the reality is that, and again, it's not solely to the uninformed. It's not solely to the poor. Rich people bounce checks.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
had businesses where doctors have bounced checks on me. Oh, I used the wrong account. I get a check from the same account. Okay, I don't really care as long as I get paid. But
Right, right, right.
I'm not
Yeah.
pursuing you
And
legally.
and
I just
and that's what we've seen, the this problem um it crosses all socioeconomic lines, right? It's not, and to be completely transparent, when we set out starting, we knew that we would have a heavy impact on, people at the bottom of the totem pole, right? This was like, hey, these are the folks who really need it. But to our surprise, in building this company, we've come across several people, whether it's investors or partners or whoever, right? We were actually just in a pitch competition in Mississippi, that we won, by the way. And one of the judges, who was an accomplished, VC, she said, "Hey, when are you coming to Alabama? Because my husband needs this, right?" So, it crosses all socioeconomic levels, and I think, it's a thing that people aren't necessarily comfortable talking about, unless it's brought up, right? So it's not something that's just being discussed at the dinner table.
Well, I'm going to do my very best to get this conversation going. I'm going to then, of course, email you and call you and say we need to have this Zoom convo with 15 people in states you work in, because that'll be the most effective way to do it.
Yeah,
But there's definitely, you're going to be working in a lot of states, and like I said, have no concern. Your business will never go away. John Morgan once said, I don't know if you know him in Orlando. He's the premier.
Morgan and Morgan,
Yeah, and he said,
absolutely.
he said, there's a chance my business is going to go away because now cars are safer and they're technologically smarter. And he's grown in business every year. He made
Huge. I
that
mean,
statement. I mean, he's a billionaire, I think, according to Forbes. So
yeah, no,
there's no
absolutely. Easily a billionaire. I think I haven't been to a city or a state. I do a little bit of traveling across the country, and Morgan and Morgan is prominent everywhere. And to,
everywhere.
in comparison, they emerged at a time where technology allowed a law firm to be built that way, right? At scale. And we're looking at the same thing, right? Technology has allowed us to build something like this. To be completely honest, this company wasn't possible to build 5 years ago. Even 4 years ago, it wasn't possible because of the variances and the minutia involved in each state, and trying to compile all that data and build all those workflows. But technology has allowed us to kind of fast track that part, and build something that can address people in no matter what state you're in.
And that's what I was saying is, as much as you see big business consuming small business, I mean, I literally have to go through a national booking chain to book a haircut now with the same barber I've been using for 20 years.
It's
But the
crazy.
fact of the matter is that it's also opened an opportunity for him. He's doing more business than Benefit. He's getting
Mhm.
prepaid on top of everything, which I don't think he ever envisioned. But, but, I just, there's both sides of this. Like you said, this wasn't even possible 5 years ago. And when you talk about John Morgan, there was a telephone book, the Yellow Pages, when he first started in business. And you either bought a big ad or a small ad, and you paid X amount of dollars a month. And that's if you paid more and got a bigger ad, you got more business. It was that simple. But now you're campaigning to the world, you know. And so, like one of Warren Buffett's favorite companies is See's Candy. See's Candy
Hmm.
used to show up at every mall Christmas time. They'd buy a small kiosk in every mall in the country during Christmas time. They don't even show up at the malls no more. They're across the
Yeah.
world on the internet. And it's become a bigger than ever business. And he said, I paid $25 million for the business 40 years ago, and we've netted $3 billion in profit across
Wow.
those 40 years. But that's an opportunity to you now, and it ain't going to take 40 years.
Right.
It's going to only take, this is a big deal. And it's a big deal to me because this is what I'm all about. I'm all about creating solutions and closing the gap between rich and poor. I'm not about creating a new social program. I'm about everybody having these huge opportunities and not being precluded from them.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we see it as a big deal. And it's encouraging that you see it that way as well. And a lot of the investors that we've talked to who have invested and a lot of our partners who have joined and helped us out, they see the scale and the opportunity there as well. It's a big deal. I think in these precarious times that we are in now, where there are a lot of people who are concerned about the laws and concerned about running afoul of the law. It's an even more valuable tool, right? And it's something that we hope, over time that we can build that trust and build that brand recognition where, people will say, hey, if I need an expungement, I can just go to LegalEase and get that done. And it's more of a, I don't want to say afterthought, but it's just kind of something that exists, right? The same way we talked about LegalZoom earlier. If you're looking to start a new LLC or a new business or something, LegalZoom is pretty much the first place that people, will go, even though we all know that you can go to the Secretary of State and incorporate the old fashioned way, right? You don't have to pay that surcharge, but some people want that I don't want to call it hand holding, but they want that guidance, and they feel more assured with that guidance as opposed to tackling it on their own. So we want to be that guide for you. We want to help the customer out and be able to navigate the system again and keep a little bit of money in their pocket in the process.
Well, I love this. I told you, we're gonna stay in touch. I'm gonna book this conference. I am gonna find people to talk to about
I would
this.
appreciate it. Please, please.
Because I want to, even if it's Florida people, we just have this opening the awareness of an expungement and how significantly important it is to the rest of your life is an important topic. I would say it's so important we should address it in our K through 12 education system, but I don't see that happening. But I will say that we can open that awareness without going through the litigation of the teachers union. But um, but this is huge. This is something I'm extremely enthusiastic about. I want to stay in touch, and like you said, we are going to stay in touch. And Chief Operating Officer of LegalEase and founder, right? You are the founder.
Yes,
And
sir.
AI is a big part of your operation, which is only going to improve as well.
Yeah, it's
The
improved
fact
a
of the matter
lot.
is,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was gonna say it's improved a lot since we started. I mean, when we first started this thing, there were some nights where I was like, I don't know if this is gonna work, right? Based on the underlying technology. It just wasn't smart enough. And here we are today where our agent Wilma, you can reach Wilma, you can have a conversation with her by chat on our website. You can have an SMS conversation by text message. You can even call and have a voice conversation with Wilma, and Wilma is there to answer those questions and anything you may have around expungements in your case in particular. So the level of advancement in technology just in the last 18 months has been I've never seen anything like it, and I've been working in tech for the last 15 years, and it's only going to get better, faster, and smarter.
Significantly better at an
Yeah,
extremely rapid pace. It's going to get
absolutely.
better at an extremely rapid pace. And the other thing I would just suggest, or you probably thought of it already, is have some way to ask Wilma just to have a self enrichment session with
Yeah,
understanding.
yeah.
Just understanding expungements and understanding and understanding even if you don't need my service, this is what we offer because you may have a friend that really needs my service. You may
Yeah,
have just heard from a friend that couldn't even complete an application because of that quagmire. Do I lie or do I just not get the job?
yeah, and we built that intentionality into our platform. If you go to our website, so legalese.com is our website. Expungement.ai is our platform. You can get to both. You can get it from go to legalease.com, or you can go to expungement.ai. Um, but when you go there initially, you can have an initial conversation with Wilma. She won't give you any specific details about your case, and she won't give you any specific advice or guidance necessarily, but she'll answer those general questions for you around expungement in your state, right? And we built that intentionally, understanding that there are a lot of people who just want a little bit of information. If we can be that resource for them, even if they come back later to actually complete the expungement, or they find out that they're not eligible today, but maybe they'll be eligible tomorrow or in a year from now, right? We can follow up with them and have that conversation at some point. So information and education are a big part of what we do. And it's been baked into our market and our business model going forward.
That is huge. I knew you thought of it. I just suggested it. I said, but you probably thought of it already. I knew you. I had a feeling you already did, but I just thought I'd throw it out there, and you did. And you know, my long-term goal, I've always talked about self-enrichment courses and how expungement should be a self-enrichment course that you could literally
Yeah.
learn about, write an essay on, and maybe even get a $20 gift card to a store or something for doing an essay that really answers the question, how could this affect you later on in life? Because it's such a significant part of life. And so that's always what I'm working on, is the idea of an education transformation to really make more people more informed, to make them more successful. And so I'm really looking forward to staying in touch, and Roger, if you want to go ahead and I want you to wrap it up. Tell us everything about your sense of mission. Wrap it up, summarize it, and then I mean, I
Yeah.
know
Absolutely. Yeah. And I appreciate this platform. I appreciate you building this platform to educate people and get the news out to folks and inviting me on. Like I definitely
I was
appreciate
thrilled
that
to
one.
see that you were interested. I was
Yeah.
thrilled to see that you were interested. I said, wow, yes, I am very interested in having Roger on.
Yeah, and we're going to keep working. Like I said, we are open to partnerships. We are actively seeking partners in every state. So I don't care where you are, even Canada, right? I can't give you the timeline of when we'll launch in Canada, but those conversations are happening, right? So we're looking for partners. We're looking for people on the ground, whether it's community leaders, whether it's organizational leaders, everywhere who are working with folks. Whether it's around economic development, criminal justice reform, reentry programs, or even just anything that involves folks, right? Because people across the gamut of the population are affected by this. So we are actively and aggressively seeking partners in every state and customers as well, right? If you know someone or if you're a person who needs an expungement and you just want to kind of poke around and have a conversation with Wilma, we invite that. Please come to our website and chat. And if there's something there, we invite you to create an account as well. Again, you can go to legalease.com. It's here on my shirt. It's legalease.com.
Yes,
And
sir.
you can get all the information you need there. You can find our social handles. We post a lot of information, state specific information on our social pages as well. And we're constantly updating those things too. So yeah, happy to have everyone and any partners who want to come out for sure. And have a conversation. Please feel free to reach out. I'll even give you my email, right? You can reach me at roger@legalese.law. I check those emails multiple times a day. So if it's there, I'm gonna see it at some point. And yeah, happy to chat, happy to see what people need and point you in the right direction.
Well, thank you, Roger, because I'm actually going to email you in a minute. But that's great that everybody has it because um, this is great. I'm very appreciative that you took the time to sit and have this podcast with me. Because, and like I said, we're going to work together on more stuff because it's a significant part of how we're going to make the world a better place, more a fair place, a more even keeled
Right,
place, more
right, right.
more equitable. So, thank you so much, Roger Roman, the chief operating officer of LegalEase, the founder of LegalEase. He's partner. He's got a partner. Tell us your partner's name again.
Lawrence Blackman. Lawrence Blackman
Lawrence
is my
Lawrence
co-founder.
co-founder.
And my chief tech CTO, my chief technical officer is Rashid Ali.
Rashid Ali. Okay, thank you, Roger. We'll talk soon.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot. Have a good
Thank you
one.
so. It was a pleasure. Thank you.